a scholar, being an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter what. It is how much effort you put in, and when you fail, take advantage of that failure. That failure is the most precious things in your life.
Welcome to the Abstract. My name is Janica, and I'm the creative lead of the Abstract.
My name is Ashita. I'm one of the co-chairs. I'm in 4th year, and yeah.
My name is Lev. I am the other co-chair for this year. I'm studying economics, and yeah, that's pretty much it. On to our guest.
Hi, my name is Reza Montazemi. I am Professor of Information System at the Groot School of Business at McMaster University.
Wonderful. So we're just going to begin with some questions. Why don't you tell us about why you chose to do research with information systems and the business field?
Well, my studies goes a long time ago. I did my undergrad and master in England, and at that time, operational research, or what's so-called here in North America, management sciences was cool. The idea was how to optimize operations in organizations. So I was very interested in that, and I did my undergrad in maths and computing, and then master in England is called operational research. And the idea is to research in the operation of the organization to figure out how best we can improve those operations. And then I worked in a research center for 6 years, and then decided to do my PhD. And at that time, that was around 1979. Information systems, management information system actually started. It was the beginning of that field, and I found it very interesting because the idea is to identify the means of implementing technology, information technology, in the organizations in an optimal way. So that's what I started, and I did my PhD at Waterloo, University of Waterloo. And I finished in 1984. And my thesis was how to use the cognitive map, the way people think, how to use that in order to identify how best to actually serve their needs for information systems. And that's how I started and did my PhD at Waterloo and joined the Groot School of Business at McMaster University as an assistant professor of information system in July 1984. So that was a long time ago. And I kept on going.
I think it was pretty recent, not too long ago. I was really curious. Right. I wanted to ask, is there a specific sector or industry you focus on, or are you pretty much generally looking at any type of business, any type of work that they do with your research?
Yeah, no specific sectors. I have done work both in manufacturing and service industry. In fact, my PhD thesis, I did empirical studies, and I did it at the Cooperators Insurance Company, which is the service sector. But I've also done work in companies such as Westinghouse and did research in that area. So it is not specific to a particular sector.
Perfect. So would you be able to tell us about some of your greatest accomplishments?
Yeah, my PhD thesis, it started, in fact, a completely new way of looking at information requirement analysis using cognitive mapping. And that was a beginning. Cognitive mapping had been used previously, but in psychology, but not in the information systems. And when I came up with the idea and did my PhD thesis, then others in the field found it cool and useful. And there are thousands of others who since then have done research in the use of cognitive map in developing a host of information systems, including using it in the AI, artificial intelligence. And another area was using a special statistical analysis called meta-analysis. And the idea of meta-analysis is to get information or statistics from all the publications in a particular field and area, and then figure out what all of them are talking about. Because when you do one study, the data is limited and the focus is limited, and you may not be able to get a real outcome out of it. So the idea of meta-analysis is to put all those statistics together and figure out what all those studies are doing. And this is meta-analysis had been used before, but not in the field of information systems. So I used that in order to, first time I used that to figure out how best is to design computer interface. And I think it was the publication came out in 1988, I think, around that time. And since then, again, other scholars have used meta-analysis in looking into information system in diverse areas. And I also have used it again in other areas. For example, my latest publication that came out last looked into significance of electronic word of mouth. And electronic word of mouth, all of us have used when we want to go to select a restaurant, for example. We look at what others have talked about a particular restaurant in a Yelp, for example. So that's called electronic word of mouth. So we look at those reviews, and the reviews have many different components. For example, number of stars, the length of the review, whether it is positive, negative, and how many people have looked at it. And there are a series of attributes that is related in those EWMs. And the idea is which of those are important and which one is not. And there are hundreds of studies, but sometimes they contradict each other. And the reason for contradiction is that one study may use a subset of the attribute, because it's impossible to, in an empirical study, to look at everything. And another study looked at another subset, and they don't come up with exactly the same answers. So used again meta-analysis in order to figure out how the whole studies in the field are talking about, and came up with very interesting results. So that was with meta-analysis. Also got interested in AI, and one of the first work that I did in AI was related to what's so-called case-based reasoning. It is a methodology in artificial intelligence, and the idea is that the world, everything we do is a story, and we learn through stories as a human. What does that mean? It means that when we grow up, they tell us, we learn that we should touch this and not touch a hot stove, for example. That's a story that goes into our memory. And then as soon as we get close to a stove, it says that, okay, that shouldn't be touched. So we extract cases or stories from our memory in order to solve the problem that we are facing with. So if your car doesn't start, the idea is last time you didn't have enough gasoline. So you look at is there enough gas in the car? You see, yep, there is enough. So does the light come on? Is there electricity around? And it says, yeah, there is electricity. So each of these are cases that you start with, and then you get to a point where you can solve the problem, or at least make a decision. The case-based reasoning had been looked and worked in computer science mainly, and I was looking at it from another angle and came up with so in computer science they used to use a series of if-then statements. So we came up with a closed form formula, which was even more powerful than the predecessors. And it, in fact, eventually a company in Canada in aerospace used that in order to come up with software for repairing aeroplanes, because complex machinery such as aeroplane has so many different parts, and the idea is when something even before it fails, what are the possible problems that may come up, and by having previous cases that had been solved in a case base, the system can identify a match that is most probable. Now, these matchings are fuzzy. It's not like a one-to-one, so it's fairly complex. Also did work with a number of Ph.D. students on tutoring systems. These days, and you see online systems being introduced, but that was about 25 years ago. 25 years ago came up with it was an intelligent tutoring systems that was called it MIS Tutor. So we used neural network, artificial neural network, which is another AI tool or methodology in order to figure out when students are going through a series of questions, when they answer questions, how long it takes them to do that, and then if they make a mistake, the system used to would take it to a particular part of the textbook, display it to them, and then lock them to read the materials, and that locking was based on the previous behavior of that specific student and how long that student takes to read, and also how many times has made mistakes in that. And I used that software in my undergraduate courses, and it helped students quite a bit. I mean, their average went from B minus to B plus, and sometimes even A minus. It was huge, and students also loved it, except the part that they would lock them. If they make a mistake, they had to read a particular part of the materials in order to learn. And some students didn't like to be locked. Nonetheless, it was very useful, and for a while, for 4 or 5 years, McGraw-Hill, both in US and Canada, they adopted it in support of their textbooks. But I didn't really have had time to keep it up, so I let it be, and just part of that, not the intelligent part, but the other part is now used by Pearson and some others. Yeah, right now I am involved in electronic word of mouth and how to deal with the reviews, and also how can we figure out false reviews and false points. These days there are lots of them on internet. So what is fake and what is not fake?
That's perfect. And it's so impressive that you would use your knowledge in your classroom. And I'm so glad that it, saw a lot of improvements with your students as well. Also, you mentioned with your case-based reasoning research in regards to planes, which, by the way, was really fascinating. Would you mind elaborating on how you were able to get help from major companies such as aerospace?
Yeah, the actual that was part of the thesis, thesis of one of my PhD students, and we approached Westinghouse actually, and they agreed to test the system, and then when everything it was working, and they were very happy with it. And then I was in a conference talking to someone, and that someone ended up to be the CEO of Atlantis Aerospace, and I talked about research, and he was fascinated, and then we scheduled a meeting. He came with a number of his experts to McMaster, and we gave a presentation, and that's how it went.
Obviously, you've been in research, for a long time, and as you mentioned today already, you've done a lot of impressive research in a lot of different fields. Is there a place for you that you haven't explored yet? A place or some field that you'd like to learn more about, in the coming years, or coming months, whatever it might be. Is there something that you're sort of still passionate about that you still haven't explored yet, or do you feel pretty satisfied with the things that you've done already?
Oh, with the research, you are not satisfied. It's impossible because as soon as you crack a problem, there are millions of new things come up. Now, as you move forward, you realize that how little you know. So the actual path becomes far more greater than when you started, and that's how it works. And yes, I am still working and doing research and very passionate. And the idea that right now I'm working on, as I mentioned, is how to assess reviews, okay? Because when we just read a review, we may not think much about it, but it has a major effect on us. And the major effect, the point is, how is it affecting us, and how can we identify false news or false reviews from the real ones, and what is the best way of writing a review, because at the end of the day the reviews are written in order to affect other people. And when we say other people, suddenly a whole host of different issues come up. Give you an example. A review that may be useful to me may not be as useful to you because of your background. And reviews that are useful to, let's say, Canadians may not be as useful to people, let's say, from Germany or from India or China, because each one of us have our stories, our way of being brought up, uh, and different things affect us differently. So that is a fascinating area to figure out how people, when they read, how those materials affect them. And also the point is when you want to help people using artificial intelligence, how effective, how can you, how would you know that that is effective and is not affecting the people in a wrong way? Especially these days, the whole host of new technologies using artificial intelligence is coming up, and we still know very little as to how it is going to affect people. And there are host of many different issues that need to be resolved, and in fact to be used and by the consumers, by people. Case in point is social media. Social media can be useful, but it can also be very dangerous because it can brainwash people. So how can we identify problems that the social media may have, such as Facebook, on consumers?
So you mentioned how you were pursuing areas of different research that haven't really been explored, such as with, cognitive mapping and information systems. So what makes you so eager to pursue these new areas of research?
Yes, it is very difficult to explain that. When you are fascinated by something, then you just need to follow that route, that journey. Um, the same, for example, some people wait for hours in the cold in order to take a picture of a bird. I mean, for me, that's crazy, but it is a passion for that person. So just following your passion and being curious about how we live and items and aspects of life around us. Now, I was fortunate to be able to do my studies and Ph.D. and follow my passion. So it's very difficult to explain that, but the world is if you look at it as a garden, and when you move around, there are different flowers, and you may be sidetracked to one and start moving there. At the end, you don't know whether you selected the best route or not, but as long as you're happy, that's good enough.
Yes, you explained that perfectly. There's a lot of things we don't know and we have yet to explore. And it's so amazing that you're taking the time to explore something new, and gaining so much out of it.
By being a researcher, you don't in the university and a professor, you don't become billionaire, but that's not the point. The point is the environment that is around us is scholarly, and that's what I love. Just breathe the air of a scholarly environment, interacting with the colleagues, and sharing stories that keep us awake at nights. So different, and life is, as you just said, is a journey, and how you want to travel from start to the end. And there are billions of different routing.
I guess sort of like, I guess you might have answered a part of this question, but to wrap it up, we were kind of wondering if you can talk a little bit about some obstacles you want students to know about, either undergrad or master's, even high school students. You know, what advice would you give to students looking to do research? I guess like I'm assuming, like you mentioned, just being passionate about what you're doing, loving what you're doing. I'm assuming that's definitely part of the advice that you're going to give.
It's like entering a house. Okay, if I don't know what the entrance is, then the walls are obstacle. Okay. Therefore, if I give up, if I hit the wall and give up, then I will never be able to enter that house. So it doesn't matter what you do, being a scholar, being an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter what. It is how much effort you put in, and when you fail, take advantage of that failure. That failure is the most precious things in your life. Learn from the failure and use it to readjust your thinking. So it is a very precious feedback. So that if anyone learns and understands that, then that person becomes quite content throughout the life, because just obviously each one of us have a different passion for different things. The objective should be to just follow your long dreams, and when you fall, take advantage of that and don't give up. That's the worst things one can do. And you always compete against yourself. Don't look at others. If I say that, well, look at a person had so much money and can live so comfortably, and as a student, I have to work like this and like that, and start complaining, then I lose sight of my goal. Okay, my objective is I compare myself to myself and try to move forward. Obviously, once in a while, I have to compare my strength vis-a-vis others to figure out how far others are ahead of me, and then again concentrate on myself in order to move forward. So the passion must be used internally uh, rather than being burnt out in terms of competition. But you can also look at the competition to figure out competitors to figure out how far they are ahead and what it is that you can learn from them, rather than being burned by jealousy that why they are ahead and why not, and so on and so forth.
That's like almost not even research specific. That's like a philosophy people should follow in life, I'd say. But yeah, either way, that's really, really helpful. Thank you for answering that.
You're most welcome. And obviously, I have to be useful to the society because I take advantage of the all these products and services around me. So I have to offer, and that I do. But then I have my own personal life that I want to enrich. Yeah, difficult to explain because it it's not anything tangible. It's that is called tacit knowledge, by the way. Tacit knowledge is the knowledge that you cannot explain, and it's based on your experience and education and all those things. And you know, during the day when sometimes you do something and it is based on your gut feeling, that's your tacit knowledge. And by the way, one of the area of my interest that has been around is tacit knowledge, how to change the tacit knowledge into procedural knowledge in order to capture. These days, this become so important, capturing and managing knowledge, which is called knowledge management, in fact, in the organization.
Thank you so much. So that brings us to the end. Would you like to say anything more to our, viewers?
Well, I wish you all the best. I know that the world has changed significantly from the time when I was at your age. That was a long, long time ago. However, it has brought in the new opportunities and major challenges. And my recommendation to you is take advantage of all the possibilities and move ahead and do it for yourself. And enjoy the journey. The whole idea is to enjoy the journey, and the more you work, obviously, the more you enjoy the outcome of it.
Thank you so much. That's amazing advice. Thank you so much, Dr. Montazemi, for speaking at the abstract and for being a part of this.
You're most welcome. I'm quite happy that, to interact with you, and wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.